Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us to discuss the Maximum Import Capability Enhancements Revised Straw Proposal. My name is Isabella Nicosia, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating the web conference today. I'm also joined on the line by our presenter, Catalin Mixa, our Senior Advisor Regional Transmission Engineer. And then I have a few subject matter experts who are also on the line who are available to answer questions throughout the call. So we have Milos Bozanek from Policy, Jeff Billington from Transmission Infrastructure Planning, Abdul Muhammad Ali from Operations Engineering, Jordan Pinev, Senior Counsel, and Robert Sparks, Regional Transmission. And their names are listed over in the panelist column on the right-hand side of the screen. The presentation that we will be discussing today is available out on the initiative webpage. So before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping reminders to go through. This call is being recorded. The recording is for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcription should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. These meetings are structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives, and while we always welcome comments and feedback, please just a reminder to keep those professional and respectful. And then lastly, just try to be brief and refrain from repeating what has already been said so that we can manage the time efficiently today and address as many comments and questions as possible. So there are some new instructions for raising your hand to ask a question in Webex. So if you are connected to audio through your computer or had the Webex call you, then you'll select the raise hand icon, which is located just above the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen. But if you did not use the Webex to call you and you just dialed in, you will need to use #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. We will be taking questions throughout the call today. Again, you can either enter the verbal queue or you can send a chat message to me. Again, my name is Isabella Nicosia. You can also send that chat message to all panelists. Just a reminder to please remember to state your name and affiliation before making your comment. Same goes for if you send a chat message, please be sure to put your name and affiliation in there as well. And then if you need any technical assistance during the meeting, please just send a chat to the event producer. His name is Marvin. So this slide here is just a depiction of where we are at in the HISO Policy Initiative stakeholder process. We're here in proposal development. I know the graphic says straw proposal, but we are here at the revised straw proposal. And then the agenda for today, we will start off with the introduction and references and give some background on the purpose of the stakeholder initiative. And then we will go through kind of a summary of the stakeholder comments received after the straw proposal. And then we'll move into our topics today. So we have improving transparency, the MIC expansion and expansion requests, some information on step 13, which is giving priority to existing RA contracts. Then we'll discuss the tariff and reliability requirements, BPM alignment of terms, and then we'll wrap up with some items for future exploration and then open it up to stakeholder comments and feedback. And then we'll go over the initiative schedule and next steps. So with that, I will hand it over to Catalin and we'll get started with the introduction and references.
Thank you, Isabella. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again for the revised straw proposal on MIC enhancements. This slide is the same I had before in case we had new people joining us. Most of you already know what maximum import capability it is. If you don't know, just to repeat that, that it's a quantity that we determine to be simultaneously deliverable to the aggregate of load. That deliverability test is done simultaneous with all the internal generators to make sure they can all get to the main heart of the load. It is allocated, it is calculated yearly by the ISO and is allocated yearly by the ISO. Next slide, please. These are just some references. If you're new to this process, you probably do want to look into this tariff section in the BPM for additional details. There's quite a lot of details in there, and if you're not familiar with the process, please go through that. Next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of this initiative was always to explore, discuss stakeholder concern and suggestion for improvements to either the calculation, allocation, trading, tracking of NIC during the RA process. Just a reminder for everybody, this would have no influence on the 2022 RA import allocation, so they're actually pretty much done. We're very close to the last step right now. But this can influence the RA 2023 and beyond. In order to do that, we would need to have tariff and BPM approved by June 1st, 2022 to be able to implement it for our year 2023. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go first through the comments we received from all of you. After the May 13 stakeholder call, we received 10 sets of comments, written comments, but really, the majority actually were for multiple stakeholders. So pretty much it's a very good participation. A lot of people made comments, which is, I think, it's great. I will summarize those in the next two slides. I just want to let you know that based on your comments, we are moving forward with 4 items, and we are not moving forward with actually 4 at this time, but we're still willing to explore one of them some more. I'm going to go through details on all of these things later. So next slide, please. So here's where pretty much all of your comments have, agreed or there were very little disagreement from any stakeholders. So this is what we're going to be moving forward with additional transparency, mostly during the allocation and trading process, and actually ownership and usage after the allocation process has ended. Most of you wanted to see some of the usage as well. Then pretty much everybody wanted to see additional stuff about NIC expansion and maybe potential improvements to that. So we'll be moving forward with that. We also got quite a few requests, and nobody was against it. So basically, we got requests to change step 13 to give preference to existing RA contracts, and that will be moving forward. Also, we got comments that we should be cleaning our tariff and BPMs. Currently, all the standard for everything that has to do with RA is 2 decimal places, and looks like we still have some tariff language that might suggest otherwise, so we'll go clean that up. So this is what we're going to move forward. I'm going to go in details on each one of these items. So I'm just pointing out what we're moving forward with. The next slide, please. Based on the comments we have received, basically we are not moving forward with the 3 items listed on top: conduct deliverability at the end of the RA showing process, incorporate an auction into the market-based method to assign the process, we capture and release the unused NIC allocation. And I'm going to go, again, the details on each one of these later. The one we're not moving forward currently with, but we got a lot of positive comments from all of you, is to augment the NIC calculation to account for liquidity. The one problem we have is that, we can't really grasp our hand around what liquidity is, where do we get the data, and so on and so forth. So again, I'm going to go through details on each one of these later. Next slide, please. Okay, so I assume there were no comments from before, but before I even go into each one of the details of each one of the topics, if anybody has any comments to basically a recap of what went on and the comments that we have received. I know I cannot go into details of every comments received. We received a lot of comments. I just kind of give the highlights of kind of overall items coming from the comments.
So again, if you would like to ask a question, you can do so by raising your hand, which is located right above the chat window. But if you called in only, then you'll need to press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue.
Okay, it looks like we do have someone here. We'll go ahead and unmute them.
Hey, this is Logan Gurnett with Valley Electric. I just had a quick question on the auction mechanism. I suppose something we had contemplated was an auction. I don't know if it would necessarily be in conjunction with the allocation process, but something to allow LSEs to value the MIC that they're holding, right? Because obviously it has different value to different people. Some folks are using it to avoid penalties in case a generator shuts down or something like that. But something to actually assign a monetary value to this stuff so that it can be easily transacted and create a liquid market. So I guess we thought about it differently in terms of how the auction could potentially work. I don't think it's necessarily with assignment as we were thinking about it. I guess my question is, can you help me understand why that sort of process wouldn't work? And to me, I mean, it's similar to sort of how we allocate, transmission rights and things like that, FTRs.
Yeah, so I'm going to get in that specific item a little later, but I will explain at that point in time our thinking behind not moving forward at this point in time with an auction.
Okay, I'll look forward to your answer later. Thank you.
Okay, doesn't look like we currently have any additional questions.
All right, thank you. So let's just dive into the actual items. So the first item is improving transparency. This had the majority of the stakeholders voting for this, so we will be moving forward with this item. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the data live. So all of the data currently resides in SERA, and it has the megawatts that is assigned to each one of those LSEs. We want to make sure that that becomes public data, so everybody should be able to see who the actual owner of the MIC is at each branch group level. We envision having by LSE, by branch group, all the megawatt quantity, going to be a contact person assigned to each one of these things. And then if it's even possible, we're going to have something that will let you have megawatts available for trade and other things. You might even be able to suggest to us what else you would like to see in there. So what we want to do through this, we actually want to make data publicly available, but we also want to improve trading with this one item. So if you believe there are some items that the people, it's valuable to them to see, and we would like to, once we build the software, we might as well put all the data that would be good to improve trading as well. And pretty much all of you wanted this by the LSE level, and we can actually only put it by LSE level, since you're going to have a contact person in case you want to do trades and you want to buy and sell. Then you want to know exactly who the contact person is for those rights. Another item people wanted to see was, well, what are the showings? So pretty much all of you wanted to see that on an aggregate level by branch group. So you wanted to see after the showings are coming in, year ahead or month ahead showings are actually final. You wanted to be able to see how much of the MIC was used at each one of the branch groups. And we will be moving forward with that, and that would be an automatic thing that can be done after all the showings are in. So we're moving forward with that. The only questions that we have for all of you is, and you don't have to respond now, you put it in your comments, is would you like to see a single aggregate number for all the LSEs, or would you like to see an aggregate number, like 3 different numbers, a PUC total, a non-PUC total, and the actual total? We'll let you choose which one you want to suggest here. But definitely, we will definitely have the one number. But if you want to see 3 numbers rather than one number, that can be accomplished. The LSEs are almost split half and half. It's about half PUC residential, half non-PUC residential. Yes, the load is different. It's almost 90% PUC and 10% non-PUC, but at least the LSE numbers are half and half. So we'll have some aggregations either way. But let us know what your preference it is among those, and you want to see 1 number or 3 numbers, and we'll come back next time with this. But we will be moving forward with making this report available, most likely through a software type where it's kind of be automatic after all the showings are in at the T-30 and cleared after T-30. Next slide, please. Okay, so we went into a lot of details last time about deliverability of imports and internal generation and the interactions between the two. Based on your comments, we thought, both verbally and in writing, we thought that was well received from you guys. So if you believe you would like to see some additional topics that you want ISO to cover or further explain or go into more details, please put it in your comments and let us know. We can always add topics for discussion and go into more details if it's required. I'm not going to go again here through that. If you want to refer back, you can go back to the last presentation we had, and there you'll have the interaction between imports and internal generation. Next slide, please. So the maximum import capability expansion, pretty much all of you believe we need to talk more about that, and we agree. So basically, we are here right now to talk details about this specific item. We didn't have much of this last time. We had a little bit. So I'm just going to start first, but what is the current process? So the current process for MIC expansion is, dual process. Basically, a MIC can naturally expand on its own, and this one actually lags the actual schedule, meaning that when a new year when a new year replaces an old year, so, we're doing the average of the two highest years among the last 5. So when that year changes, if we have a new highest year, then basically you eliminate 1 year, you get a new year, and if that new year has higher schedules, then naturally the MIC expands. It is also, it's coming after the schedules are in, so, pretty much everybody treats this as backwards-looking expansion. The forward-looking expansion that we have today, it's only by the policy-driven expansion. So basically what we do there, if we have contracts that are in the PUC portfolio that are coming from outside the ISO, we check those and we make sure that all of the new contracts can fit within the remaining import capability coming from that area. So remaining import capability is for everybody to have the same terminology. Maximum import capability is the total. The remaining import capability is the part that's not locked. So some people have some old ETCs and TORs. Those are transmission rights. And some other people have pre-IRA import commitments or new use import commitments. Those are contracts that are already locked on a certain branch groups. So the part that's remaining beyond those, so beyond what's already locked up, it's called remaining import capability. So when we do the policy-driven expansion, we go into the areas where these contracts are coming from, and we want to make sure that we have enough remaining import capability in order to account for all the new contracts that are coming through the base PUC portfolio. If we don't have enough, then we are proposing an expansion to take care of that. So this is how the MIC is expanded today. Next slide, please. So today, based on our discussions, everybody thought that we can make improvements to this process. And one of the improvements to the process is it feels like the non-CPUC jurisdictional LSCs, maybe it's more true for some non-PUC jurisdictional LSCs than others, but the whole point is here there is a discrepancy between what's coming from the main PUC portfolio, which is actually calculated on renewable data information and macroeconomics and all that stuff, versus the actual contracts that especially the non-CPUC jurisdictionals are signing. PUC does have access to their own jurisdictional contracts, so that's easier for them to manage, but they actually don't have access to the non-PUC jurisdictional data. Our ISO's preferred solution at this point in time is to have ISO collect such data and give it to the CPUC for the preparation of the base portfolio to make sure the base portfolio accounts for the non-PUC jurisdictional contracts. ISO prefers this route to actually adding these contracts after we receive the PUC portfolio. The reason we prefer this is because if we add it after we receive the PUC portfolio, we don't know what to subtract from that portfolio. Otherwise, the portfolio will be too big now if we're adding these contracts. So our preference would be that the PUC portfolio comes and have these already locked before they go and add other resources through the macroeconomic and renewable information to that base portfolio, that basically they account for these contracts ahead of time rather than at the end of the process. That's the ISO's proposal. Also, what we have stated in the past is still true. Basically, these CPUC portfolios are done many years in advance, and as such, we really don't know exactly where the contract, which branch groups are going to show up. So, for example, it says the contract is going to come from Arizona. Well, which branch group is it coming? Neither is going to come at Palo Verde. There is quite a big difference between the two. So we believe that if there is enough remaining import capability left, this problem should be self-correcting. In the past, the LSEs didn't have a chance to lock MIG for any new contract at the branch group level, but now we do. So what ISO expects is going to happen, that the LSEs will first get the remaining import capability in hand at the branch group of their choice, and then they'll go sign the contract. And with that in hand, with the remaining import capability in hand and with the contract, if it's with a pseudo-tie and dynamic schedule, which the majority of them are nowadays, then you can actually log that for a multi-year basis. We do make all of that publicly available. So the next round, the LSEs should actually see which branch groups are, basically getting filled up, and they should ask the partner to request transmission to a different point. Usually, if you're coming from Arizona, you can ask which transmission point you want service to. You can ask, you want a service point to, you want rights to Palo Verde, or you want rights to Meade, and so on and so forth. You can choose a few different branch groups. So if you see that one of these branch groups is getting full, don't choose to come into the ISO border where is it full. So we think this is kind of a self-correcting problem on a going forward basis. So our proposal is at this point in time not to do anything but this one item, other than make LSEs aware that they should actually receive the remaining import capability in hand before they sign new contracts. And that would make everybody's life easier. Regardless, next page, please. So regardless of that, today we do not allow MIG expansion requests. So nobody can come in and request a MIG expansion. We propose to change that. So we believe that LSEs that have a legitimate reason, and we can study a million permutations of different things for people asking for stuff. But if you do have a legitimate reason, like you have an existing RA contract, or you are building a major transmission that is coming to the ISO border, then you would be able to ask the ISO for a MIG expansion. So we're planning to move forward with this idea that we allow in the future, we will allow people to request expansions. Now, the expansion would be at the expense of all the ratepayers. First, if it exists, we'll just give it out. It's already paid by the ratepayer. If it doesn't exist, then the ISO might be expanding, but still all the ratepayers will be paying for that. So just the fact that you're requesting the MIG doesn't actually convey you any rights during either market scheduling, market operations, or MIG allocations. So we are willing to look to make sure that we have enough remaining import capability to fill in all the contracts that are signed today, or some of the contracts that might be signed tomorrow, because some major new transmissions are coming into the ISO, especially if they're not already covered through the policy-driven MIG expansion. So we're proposing to allow people to make these requests in the future. Next slide, please. This is basically just a continuation of that slide. If deliverability is available, we'll just increase the MIG to make sure that all the contracts could fit in the remaining input capability. If it's not available, then we do have a couple of choices here. So basically, the choices would be that the request would be denied, and now we're going to have to think how to bifurcate this in two different positions here. One position is, okay, the ISO will have a choice to make this upgrades if it believes it's beneficial to all the ratepayers. And then in the future, we're thinking that maybe we should actually allow the requester to pay for these upgrades, but that's going to be a separate. This is not going to happen. It's just the last bullet over there tries to explain that part. If we would allow the requester to pay for a facility study and pay for the upgrades, basically everything that comes on with those upgrades, all the rights, the framework, the process, the rights, all of that is not going to get part of this initiative. We are willing to move here with the other stuff that's paid by the ratepayers. You can still make requests, but everything that's paid by the ratepayer. But everything that's not paid by the ratepayer will have to go through a different stakeholder initiative at the ISO to figure it out, all the details, because there is a lot of stuff that needs to figure it out. And that's not going to get done through the stakeholder process. I just want to be very honest with everybody here. I guess I think I went through two of these. Maybe I should stop here and see if we have any questions regarding either transparency or MIC expansions.
It looks like we have a couple of questions. We'll go to the first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Chris Devin with Customized Energy Solutions. I like that you guys have added some of these aspects on this MIG expansion. I think it's pretty helpful to try to put some proposals out on this, but I guess I just kind of have a general question about maybe more how it relates to the external load forward scheduling process that was kind of part of this and then was spun off. And I guess it's kind of about, how much of this expansion part might need to be coordinated with that initiative and considering the scope of that one and where that might go and what, comments have been submitted from some of the stakeholders in that other initiative. I'm just curious if you have any plans to maybe either combine those somehow or coordinate those or perhaps have to come back and maybe revise this, depending on what happens there. And if you have any thoughts on that aspect and how it interacts at this point or any plans for how that would be coordinated, that sort of thing.
Yes, Chris. Our current intention is anything that's coming out of the other stakeholder process that Milos is doing for the wheel-throughs, it will be folded right in here. So if they would be allowing that, then it will be folded in here, and it will be just another way to allow expansion requests.
Okay. Yeah, because it just seems to me like this is very similar to the way that other areas are able to allow under their OAT framework to allow for a request of transmission service expansion and that sort of thing. But this is just really more about just the MIC piece of it. So a lot of parallels there. But anyhow, I know that you guys are trying to do both things at the same time. So we'll just keep abreast of everything that you guys are working on both sides of this. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take the next caller. I believe that caller is opted out. I'll go ahead and move to the next.
Hi, good morning, Catalin Davis, American Aces Power. Question about transparency. So I understand there's a fair amount of MIC that's currently held by external balancing authorities. It's somewhere in the nature of 5,000 megawatts. So I guess I have two questions. First of all, are the holders of that MIC made publicly available? And then, regardless, are LSCs allowed to purchase MIC from those external BAs, or is that something that's not possible?
Okay, so I'll try to go in order. So we are so on aggregate, you can see on which branch group how many megawatts are held by external parties. That's already public. We have currently published. If you go to the reliability requirements webpage, and then you look under 2022 import allocations, we have published all the internal contracts, and that has to do with ETCs, TOR, pre-RN commitment, the new use import commitment. So they're all published by LSC, by branch group. We have not published the external LSC data at this point in time on individual LSC basis. However, we are looking into the new tariff language. If we have that right, we will repost that and add the external LSCs there as well. We are in the process of looking through that. So that's the data that is public already. And you were also asking if you are able to buy from them and trade from them. So their rights are actually set aside in step 2, and they're not going through the allocation process. Therefore, they're not in CIRA. We do have a bulletin, technical bulletin that we published a few years back. If if you're getting the rights from them somehow, and you open those rights for everybody to schedule upon, then we would be giving you those MIC allocations, and they'll be traded just like anybody else can trade their MIC allocations on those branch groups. So we do want to do good to the society, and because people are opening up their rights for everybody to schedule on, we are willing to give those people who are doing this the MIC credit. So please search for a technical bulletin for that, or if you send me an email, I can probably find the link and send it to you. But just for everybody to know, we are allowing, if you're getting these rights from external parties, as long as you are opening those up in the market for everybody to schedule upon, you can receive the MIC allocations for those and be able to trade and show array on them just like everybody else. If that's not true, then those are locked for those external parties, and they're not going through CIRA, and they cannot be traded, and they're basically for the sole use of the external LSCs to the ISO.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Cal.
Okay, we'll take the next caller.
Hi, this is Ravi Sankaran with Southwestern Power Group, and I have a clarification question on slide 13. Really just want to confirm that I understood you correctly. This is at the bottom, what an LSC can do if it has an RE import contract, or I guess really the last bullet, suggesting that the LSCs can first get unlocked MIC at the desired branch group before signing a new RA import contract with a dynamic scheduler to the type resource. 13. 2 more up. Yeah, the question is, can you just confirm how they would do that? Like, would that be steps, the usual step, process steps 9, 11, 13? And then what would happen if the MIC weren't available through those steps? I just want to confirm, the process there.
Yeah. So how the process works today is that LSCs that are that already have contracts that are above their load share ratio, they just get to keep those contracts they have today, and they get allocations for them. if they have a lot of prior import commitments, they do not get any remaining import capability. But for the LSEs who are below their load share ratio, they get remaining import capability to put at whatever branch groups they wish from whatever branch groups have remaining import capability. So there is a big spreadsheet under step 6. So if you go to, again, reliability requirements under the 2020-22 import allocations, and if you look at the step 6 document, I know it's a very big document, but if you zoom in, you can see on the very bottom line there is remaining import capability on branch groups. So those numbers are exactly the same as remaining import capability that's giving to the LSCs that are basically below the load share ratio. And then they go and tell us which branch groups they want to put those in. They can also trade and sell those to other people before and after they put them on branch groups. So after they have those remaining import capability, meaning unlocked import capability on those branch groups, then if they come back, so that process is done in steps 7 through 13. So steps 7 through 13, actually 8, sorry, steps 8 through 13, it literally allocates that remaining import capability. So if somebody gets that, and then between now and next May 15 shows up with a contract, then going forward, they can lock those remaining import capability that they already have for next year. With the proof they have that contract, they can pretty much lock that for the extent of the contract time frame. And then we will make that public. So once the lock is achieved, we would make that public. So today, if you go on the SAM web page, there is an Excel spreadsheet that says the contractual data, and that data includes all the LSEs and all their prior import commitments, all the new use import commitments, all their ETCs and TORs on each one of the branch groups. So you can sort by branch group, you can sort by the LSE, you can sort by whatever you want to, and we will make that public. So our assumption is that going forward, if the more and more people start locking these with new contracts, you would be able to see how much is locked and who has the locks and for how many years. So you'll be able to see all of that, and you would be kind of self-guiding yourself that if you're coming from Arizona, you might not want to pick a branch group that is already fully locked. You want to pick a different one. So when you sign a new contract with your partner from the other side, you can ask that local utility not to give them rights to this branch group, but to give them transmission rights to the other branch group.
Okay, but really this proactive approach of first securing the unlocked MIG before signing the contract, then locking it, that would only be successful if it were available, if the unlocked MIG were available at the time, right? If there were insufficient MIG, yeah, okay. Then if it's insufficient, then we'd go on to the expansion steps you're proposing later.
Yes. And if it's not enough, then we're going to open up a few ways to ask, because right now nobody can ask for an expansion. Well, we're opening up a few ways to ask for expansions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the next caller.
Hi, Catalin. This is Rayanne Quadro from Gridwell Consulting. Thank you so much for the call this morning. Your explanations have been really clear and easy to understand. My first question is kind of an add-on to the previous commenter. It was my understanding that you have to have a contract before you can receive a MIG allocation, and thus I kind of feel like we're in a chicken and egg scenario with regard to locking down that new allocation. Is that correct?
No, you do not have to have an RA contract to get MIC allocations. The MIC is divided to, the MIC for internal LSEs is divided to all the LSEs basically on their load share ratio. However, the people who already had pre-RA but commitments, meaning contracts that were signed before 2006, they get the allocation for those contracts even if they're above the load share ratio. Everybody else just gets the rest allocated to them. And you would actually have these allocations in hand before you would go and sign a contract. That was always the intent, not the other way around.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. My other question was about the deliverability item that you mentioned a little bit earlier. If someone comes in and requests a MIC increase at a particular tie, you said the deliverability is reduced. Is that correct?
I'm not understanding the actual question. So if somebody, so right now we don't allow it, but in the future, if we allow requests. Okay, so today,
that would reduce the deliverability.
Yeah, so basically what MIC is, it's deliverability. So we would check to make sure if a request comes in, let's say we don't have enough remaining import capability, people have too many RA contracts already, and there is not enough remaining import capability, we should expand that remaining import capability to make sure that at least we have room for the existing contract. That's kind of the idea here. So let's say we get a request to increase an intertie, and if the deliverability is available, we will just increase the intertie to that amount. And then it's up to the LSE to go get the remaining import capability and lock it to their contract, but at least we'll have enough to make sure that we can fit in the contract. That was the idea here. Now, if there is not enough deliverability available, then we need to basically coordinate with GIP and figure it out, how we can expand it, if it's in the best interest of the ratepayers to expand that or not, and so on and so forth. And we're planning to do that through the TBP process. And then, either we do take the expansion, and if we do take the expansion, then the expansion will have to wait until some new TPP project is in place, or if we believe that TPP expansion is not in the best interest of the ratepayer, then that is a separate item we might be opening up for everybody to be able for them to pay for that upgrade and then, get the rights for that and whatnot. But that process, that whole process of opening up for third parties to pay for upgrades, it's not going to be part of this. Just to be honest, it's not going to be. We are willing to open that up, but that entire process, how to do that, who pays for what, and how they get what rights they get if they pay for that, that's going to be a totally separate stakeholder process, not to the stakeholder process.
Understood. I'm so sorry I didn't get to my specific question before you repeated yourself. I didn't want to have to put you through that. My question was regarding how you make the decision about reserving deliverability in advance of identifying what MIC is available or not available. Would that be up to the current cluster that's in phase 2 or up to the most recent cluster? Meaning if this process was in place right now, would you reserve deliverability for everyone asking up to cluster 14 or only up to cluster 12 before you made the decision about whether or not there was MIC available for the increase?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question from the beginning. So that policy is not set yet. My, feeling is that, if the request comes in now, it would be after whatever was there before. So if the generation interconnection request came in first, then, this would be queued after that. It would depend on the timing.
Okay. So I might call it like cluster 14B, MIC increase or something like that. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
That process is not set up yet, and we're willing to work on that process.
Thank you so much.
Okay, it looks like we have no additional questions at this time.
All right, thank you. So we'll be moving forward to the next item. The next item is we got comments from quite a few of you. I think it was at least the 6 cities VAs and probably some other people to told us to give priority to RA contracts during step 13. Just for everybody, remember what step 13 is. Step 13 is if there's any remaining import capability, this is unlocked MIC that is not allocated in steps 8 through 12, meaning the LSEs who actually have remaining import capability, they come in and they nominate a couple of rounds on which branch groups they want to. And then at the end of the process, there is some branch groups that either nobody wants, and they're left with some import capability on them. The idea here is that what if there is an import capability that is left and nobody really wants, and somebody has an RA contract on it, maybe they should get priority, because the way the Step 13 is allocated today, it just goes to first comes, first served basis, and anybody can ask. This is not just the LSE. Anybody can actually ask to receive those. So we agree it's a good thing to give it to somebody who already has an RA contract. What we're willing to do here is I just want to let you know if there is anything available, normally it goes in like the first cycles of the first seconds of the first day. So that's when we receive those requests, they logged in, very, very, very fine print, because they are exercised in order. So we're willing to, in order not to basically have delay too much this process, which is already over a month and a half long, basically what we are willing to say is that, okay, you get the same day priorities. You can come back, because usually these go out in one day. We process them daily, basically, when we receive these things. But let's say in the first day we say, okay, we're going to open Step 13 tomorrow. Then pretty much any day tomorrow you can send in your RA contract. If you have an RA contract, you're going to have to send in the proof request for that. What we're assuming here is that you're going to have to send something written down and signed like you're doing for pre-RA commitment and new use import commitments. You're going to have to fill in a template with all your contractual data. But if you do that, then you would have priority on that branch group. I believe the 6 cities proposal was, well, what if you get more than one person with an RA contract? First of all, these are very, very low probability that anything left over on a branch group that people actually have already RA contracts, and then you have to have more than one person who has these RA contracts. So this is like very, very low probability. Our preference is if we actually, get that we do in the first come, first served basis. It's actually much easier for us to implement, and we understand that the 6 cities request was that they do get on the ratio of megawatts requested versus megawatts available. We can implement that too, but it will be a lot more complicated. Basically, we'll have to establish some more rules about what actually qualifies. Maybe do we need a summer value, or it's just like we have for new use import commitments. We might need to work more on exactly what that is, and it is harder for the ISO to implement than the first come, first serve. But we're willing to work with both. Our current proposal is that we do first come, first serve among the people who with RA contracts. So RA contracts always have priority on that first day. As long as it's received in the first day, RA contract will have priority over non-RA contract requests. But if they have more than one person with RA contracts, then our preference is that it's first come, first serve. Please put it in your comments if you do prefer the other way around, the megawatt requested versus megawatts available split between the people with RA contracts. We are willing to entertain that as well. If we get a lot of requests like that, then we can flip it over. Next slide, please. So another item we'll be moving forward with, as most of you know, everything that is done today in RA has done with 2 decimal places. QC calculations, showings, gradings, everything is done with 2 decimal places. It looks like we might have some pieces in the tariff and the BPM that suggest otherwise. Part of this initiative, we will be going through the tariff language in the entire section and through the BPM through the entire section to make sure we do not have those, or if we do have, they'll be cleaned up and eliminated. So it's just want to reiterate for everybody, everything that's done today in RA is done with 2 decimal places. And I think this is the last one of the 4 items we're moving forward with. So I'm going to open it up here for comments on these last 2 items.
As a reminder to raise your hand, you can do so by clicking the icon located on the right-hand side above the chat window. If you called in only, you can enter the verbal queue by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad.
Okay, it doesn't look like we're receiving any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to be going now through some of the items we would not be moving forward with. At this point in time, we are still willing to entertain this one, except I really don't know how technically to do this. We had a conversation last time. This was actually proposed by, I think, PG&E and Edison, and even they acknowledged last time they don't know how to gather this data. This is Catalin. I still don't know how to gather this data. While it is a good idea to augment the calculation per liquidity, I don't know where to get the public data that would be required. How do I discriminate one branch group versus another? I need to understand exactly how technically to augment MIC at one branch group versus another based on liquidity. I don't know where this liquidity data is going to come from. And I need to have this data before I actually, get the calculation done. So I don't know where to get this data ahead of time. I'm still having the same questions here. They're listed here. You don't have to respond right now. You can put it in writing, but if anybody has any idea where to get this data from, if you know of any public documentation or anything else we can use in order to augment the calculation, we're willing to move this forward. But at this point in time, we're missing that technical component that I don't really know how to translate this, how to prioritize one group versus another. Next slide, please. So at this point in time, we are not going to be moving forward with these three items. Basically, conducting deliverability studies at the end of the RA process. We really believe this could leave LSCs with a lot of stranded assets. It has huge ramification in the CPM backstop cost allocations. If your contract is denied coming from your imports, it will take a very long time to have an RA showing validation. It takes over a month to run deliverability studies. It's not possible to do it in the month-ahead process. So we believe most of you agreed with the ISO. This has such a high ramification for all the LSCs involved that we would not be moving forward with this. We heard, today from VA, maybe they had different proposal here, but the option that we understand that we were supposed to incorporate was supposed to be for the allocation of the remaining import capability, not for those that are getting MIC already locked for their current RA contracts. So we always understood that request was that everybody who has existing contracts, pre-RA input commitment, new use income commitments that are already locked, or ETCs and TORs, they get their allocation no matter what. The option we understood we were supposed to do was for the remaining import capability. So on that front, we believe there'll be less and less remaining import capability because more and more people will start exercising the right to lock MIC on multi-year basis after they sign new contracts. Also, we're going to have quite a significant, startup cost to build new software, and we did get into the complication of how to allocate and incentivize the auction revenues. Remember, because this is all done on low share ratio, some people will receive more remaining import capability than others, and then how the auction revenues will be allocated to whom, and then that gives incentives to certain LSCs to use the auction one way or another. So we thought just the issues were too complicated for an item that will get diminished across the years. We thought if we improve transparency and if we improve trading, that should most likely alleviate the need to actually move to an auction process. So maybe we did misunderstood what the intent was. Maybe they were trying, and I'm going to open it up in a minute here to explain more, but maybe we misunderstood what their proposal was. how to do an auction without just using add the remaining input capability. Also, for the same reason as I explained here, we will not gonna basically recapture and then release the unused MIC allocations. We believe that improving trading should be, much better facilitation of this. There are, downsides for recapturing release of MIC allocations that we went through last time, which was the correct compensation for something that is an ownership right today. The other one was, when this is done, this could actually change all the showing timelines depending when it is done. If we're doing it today at T-minus 45, why after T-minus 45? It gives an incentive to people to actually come short just to see if there is anything left. We don't really want to incentivize people to come short with their showings. So there is a multiple complications with the showing timeline in the month ahead process if we're going to go and do a recapture and release. We believe that the much better idea is to improve the trading, and that's why we're trying to build the transparency in the platform to improve trading before we would go to other more, other measures like an auction or release and recapture. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to stop here and take questions, and maybe VA can come back online and explain a little more about their view of the action if I misunderstood what the action was about. And we can also discuss anything else that people want to discuss.
Do we have any questions?
Currently seeing no questions. As a reminder, you can use the raise hand icon, or if you dialed in, using #2 on your telephone keypad. Okay, it looks like we do have a question here. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Hey, this is Logan again from VEA. Catalin, I think we'll respond via writing. I mean, my understanding again was basically an auction that would at the very least establish a value for all that for MIC. One of the challenges seems to be that given the lack of kind of a market, folks don't necessarily know how to value this commodity, and so I think the idea in part would be one way or another, whether folks want to trade it or not, they should at least know what it's worth to other parties, and the best way to do that is to establish a market rather than sort of bilateral transactions that create difficulty and a lack of transparency in the value. And so we can respond in writing and all the details. I won't go through that, and frankly, Ellen Wolf sort of understands it better than me, but I think we did envision it a little differently, and we can follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll take the next caller.
Yeah, hi, it's Ravi Sankaran from Southwestern Power Group. And I guess my question is regarding the items that you do plan to move forward with, and specifically around the MIC expansion. Is the idea that all of those elements would be taken forward in the November board meeting, and with the tariff changes proposed, I guess, for 2023? Or are you thinking some of those would be longer term enhancements?
Yeah, so everything we plan to take at the November board meeting, everything that the ISO can do on behalf of the ratepayers, and that is paid by the ISO ratepayers. What we're not going to be able to take at the November board meeting is any request, that private request to pay for additional MIC expansion. Those will have to come through some other already ongoing stakeholder process or a new stakeholder process, because it just entails a lot of details, and we just can't carry those in the stakeholder process. But through this stakeholder process, we're willing to add to the MIC expansion. We can add the request, we can add all of that stuff, but only the part that is done by the ISO funds and ratepayer.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
we're taking the next caller.
Hi, it's Ellen Wolf from Rosero Consulting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Catalin. Thanks for the discussion. There are a lot of good elements, I think, to this new proposal. I was just going to follow up a little bit on what Logan talked about and then on the points on slide 19. Yeah, I think the problem on the the two latter bullets that you say you're going to not do, the problem that the market's encountering is that some LSEs hold rights and for one reason or another aren't trading them, even at relatively high market prices these days. And so one of the concepts in the idea of an auction was to make available something like auction revenue rights, kind of akin to what PJM uses in its CRR auction, where LSEs get the rights to the revenues from the auction for the MIC that they would otherwise hold. Then if they want to keep the MIC associated with those rights, they would have to actively participate in the auction and nominate to keep the MIC rather than receive the money. And otherwise, those rights would be made available through the auction kind of to the one that values them the most, and that LSE would get the revenues from that. And it just seems like a good way to provide an extra step to really have the LSEs that hold those rights question whether they really want to forego the financial value, market value of those rights to hold them. So it wouldn't just be the residual, it would really be having the whole volume of the MIC kind of go through the auction with those that have rights to them, being able to take those rights as a price taker, essentially, or being able to capture the financial revenue. So, I understand it's complicated, but there is a problem, I think, that won't be solved if you don't do something, and that is sort of this a little bit inherent tendency for one that has the rights to not put a price tag on them themselves. So I think just encourage you to keep thinking about second and third bullets. I think another way you could do the third is to consider the possibility of oversubscribing some of these paths. If there's going to be persistent holding and not using of residual capacity, instead of the ISO having to do this quick decision about releasing unused rights and that incentive that creates, and maybe the ISO could just make available more MIC at certain paths, knowing that traditionally these paths have LSEs that sit on their rights and don't use them. So anyway, it's kind of a long explanation, but I think there is a problem still that exists because of some sort of collective bias with certain LSEs to hold rather than release into the market for others to use their rights. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. So since we are, we thought about that. We believe that if we're going to improve transparency and we're going to list every LSE on the public, on the outside web, by branch group, by all the megawatts by branch group, and with a contact name, and maybe make some room there for how much the trading they for, then the people would know exactly. Right now, I'm not sure that you actually know exactly who to contact if you want a certain branch. So you would go, you would sort by that branch group, and you see, okay, I have two LSEs to have remaining input capability here. Let me just go ask these two particular persons, and that will definitely facilitate trading. Maybe we can improve that by even allowing that to be done right there online and somehow. But we're going to think about that. I think I understood your point. I think from other people's comments that I got is that they did not prefer that bigger auction part. They were actually only thinking of an auction for the remaining input capability rather than everything else, for all the old contracts and everything else they had. But we're going to rethink through that, and we'll keep that in mind. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thanks. I guess I wish I was as optimistic as you are about the transparency, because I think in a lot of cases, those that need the MIC can figure out who holds it and have reached out and tried to obtain it and have been, in many cases, or at least in my experience, in a lot of cases, unsuccessful. So I guess I'm just not quite as optimistic as you are and hope that you'll keep thinking about alternatives. Thanks, Catalin.
Thank you.
And we'll take the next caller. And please make sure that your device is also unmuted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Alan Meck from SDG&E. I'm still thinking through this myself. I'm not sure exactly how this plays out, but one additional consideration that we probably have to keep in mind is, in keeping with the principle of the California IOUs are the entities that are paying for the transmission system and ought to have the right to use it if they need to. It might throw an additional monkey wrench into the gears on transactability, because you might need to try and create some sort of right of first refusal whereby a California LSC would, or IOU would, need to have like the first crack at taking up those MIC allocations. And I'm not sure exactly what that does to the market, but that's something that we need to consider. And I don't know, it's just a thought. I'm throwing that out there as a comment, not really a position.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I'm not sure what your comment was too. So today, the way it works today is that based on your load share ratio, you get your remaining capability, and you get to put it on whatever branch group you want. So you do have the choice. You were thinking more or less if we're moving forward with an auction type mechanism, or what were you implying?
Well, even if your goal is to make MIC transactable, thinking holistically, it seems like if you've got two bidders on a transmission path, because we've got an IOU who wants an RA import contract and a wheeling schedule from someone in Arizona, for example, and they're both bidding on the same path, and they both want, let's say, the last 10 megawatts available. Well, in keeping with the principle that the California IOU has been the one that has been helping to pay for the transmission system, whereas the wheeling request has not, then somehow the California IOU ought to win that bid, right? Does that make sense?
I think I understand what you're saying. Is we are not actually proposing any of that stuff at this point in time, so I'm not really sure how to link your concern with what we have today. So the import allocation will continue. Basically, our proposal is that it will continue to go as it is today. So you will get your remaining import capability, and you get to pick the branch groups that you want to go through in steps 8 through 13. And if there's anything available there, then anybody can come and get it. But that has nothing to do with the wheel-throughs. The wheel-throughs, if and when they're moving forward with requests that's coming through the other stakeholder process, that would be folded in here just so they can request an increase to the MIC, not to take away from the MIC that's allocated to internal LSCs.
Yeah, and this is Milos. Can you hear me okay, Catalin?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Milos from the California ISO. And just maybe, Alan, to address your question a little bit more specifically, I think there's a difference between kind of MIC and allocations of MIC for RA imports and then wheel-through transactions that are offering to the market. Both RA imports and wheels have to offer into the market, regardless of whether that the RA import or that transaction has allocated MIC, and the market will ultimately determine which to award, irrespective of whether that RA import essentially has MIC allocated. In the other initiative that we're working on, the wheel-through initiative called External Load Forward Scheduling Rights Process, that's where we're looking at a long-term framework for establishing scheduling priorities in the market, such that if you have competing requests for imports, exports, wheels, how does the market discern between those and which one to, particularly in self-schedule situations, which one to award? What priorities do different types of transactions have? So that's a little bit separate issue than this MIC allocation, which is allocated strictly to essentially for RA purposes and accounting methods. It's different from the scheduling priorities that the market may consider between different types of transactions.
That's
and those scheduling priorities we're addressing in the other initiative.
Yeah, I think I had gotten those signals crossed. That's a good point. Thank you for the clarification.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, I believe those are all the questions we currently have.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Isabella, let's. Okay, so here is our current initiative schedule. Basically, we're going to wait for your comments in writing the next 2 weeks, and then we'll work on a draft final proposal, and we'll try to also work on a draft italic language so we can go with them concurrently for the last round. And we'll have another call on September 20th, and then after we get your comments on that round, we'll post the very, very final before we go to the board. Our current schedule is still to go to the November board meeting.
Any questions on the schedule? Okay. And as far as next steps and comments, they are due by end of day August 25th, which is 2 weeks from today. You can submit your comments using the template provided on the initiative webpage that will be available later today, and the initiative webpage is linked here on this slide. But if there are no further questions, then that concludes today's stakeholder call. Thank you all for your participation, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services